Hey guys, tonight we step into a world where falling asleep doesn't mean staying asleep, where the night itself feels alive, stretching and breathing around you in ways that probably ruin your modern sleep schedule in about 2 days. Welcome, new video on soft history nights. And you find yourself not in your bed, but in a dim, drafty room lit by the soft flicker of a dying fire. The air smells faintly of wood smoke and wool, and outside, the night presses in like a quiet, watchful presence. You pull your blanket tighter, already sensing something is different. Because here, sleep doesn't come in one neat, uninterrupted block. Instead, it arrives in pieces. And honestly, you probably won't survive this, at least not without complaining about it first. You lie down, expecting the familiar drift into unconsciousness until morning, but instead, after a few hours, your eyes snap open. Not because of noise, not because of stress, you just wake up, calm, alert, as if your body has quietly decided, all right, that's enough for now. And here's the strange part. Nobody thinks this is unusual. In medieval Europe, a very real and well-documented pattern called segmented sleep was the norm. People referred to it as first sleep and second sleep, with a wakeful period in between. It wasn't insomnia, it wasn't a problem to fix, it was simply how nights worked. You drift into your first sleep shortly after sunset, when darkness naturally pushes you toward rest. Then, a few hours later, you wake, completely naturally, entering a quiet, almost dreamlike state of wakefulness. Historians still argue whether this pattern was biologically hardwired or shaped by the absence of artificial light. But standing here, wrapped in rough blankets, it feels less like a theory and more like an undeniable rhythm your body just follows. You sit up slowly. The room is silent except for the soft breathing of others nearby. There's no glowing phone to check, no notifications, no late-night scrolling rabbit hole waiting to steal your time. Just darkness and a strange sense of calm. A quirky detail you'd never expect? Some medieval texts suggest this in-between time was considered ideal for thinking clearly, almost like your brain hits a rare focus mode at midnight. Imagine waking up at 2 a.m. and suddenly feeling productive instead of mildly panicked. Unthinkable, right? You shift on your straw mattress, which is, by the way, less luxury bedding and more crunchy hay experience. It rustles beneath you with every movement, reminding you that comfort is relative. And yet, despite the occasional itch or the suspicion that something small might also be sharing your bed, don't think about it too much. Your body feels oddly at ease. Outside, the world is deeply still. No engines, no distant traffic, no glowing cities humming in the distance. Just the natural quiet of a world that truly sleeps. And you begin to realize something unsettling. Maybe this broken sleep isn't broken at all. Maybe it's the modern way, your way, that's the strange one. Because here, in this moment between sleeps, time doesn't rush you. It waits. And so do you.
You don't panic when you wake. That's the first thing you notice. There's no sudden jolt of anxiety, no instinct to check the time, no quiet dread about how many hours of sleep you've lost. Instead, you just exist. Calm, steady, somewhere between dream and waking life, as if the night itself has gently lifted you for a while. This is your watch, the space between first and second sleep, and it stretches out before you without urgency. In medieval households, this pattern wasn't just accepted, it shaped how people lived. Your evening begins early because without artificial lighting, darkness closes in fast. You eat, you talk, maybe you sit by the fire until your eyes grow heavy. Then you slip into first sleep, usually lasting a few hours. But what matters isn't just the sleep, it's what comes after. You shift again on your straw-filled mattress, the faint crunch reminding you that comfort here has its limits. Somewhere nearby, someone coughs softly. Another person turns over. No one seems surprised to be awake. In fact, this quiet stirring of life in the middle of the night feels expected. Historians still argue whether this segmented sleep pattern was universal across all regions or more common in certain parts of Europe, but surviving letters, medical texts, and even court records casually reference first sleep as if everyone already understands it. No explanation needed. It's just how nights work. You swing your legs over the side of the bed. The floor is cold, instantly reminding you that central heating is still centuries away. You stand anyway, adjusting to the darkness. The room is lit only by embers now, a soft orange glow that barely outlines the shapes around you. And here's where things get interesting. People didn't just lie there waiting to fall back asleep. This in-between time had purpose. Some would pray, believing this quiet hour was especially sacred. Others might tend to small chores, mending clothes, checking on animals, or quietly preparing for the next day. And yes, sometimes people would simply talk. Imagine that, waking up at 2 a.m. and having a calm, thoughtful conversation instead of doom-scrolling yourself into existential dread. There's even a slightly amusing historical tidbit. Some medical advice from the time suggested that this wakeful period was the best moment for certain personal activities, claiming the body was most relaxed and balanced then. We'll keep that PG-13, but let's just say medieval doctors had opinions. You move closer to the fading fire, holding your hands near the warmth. It's not much, but it's enough. The silence feels different now, not empty, but full of quiet possibility. And something else begins to settle in your mind. This rhythm feels natural. Modern life teaches you that waking in the middle of the night is a problem, a flaw, something to fix with sleep apps, white noise machines, or a frustrated glance at the clock. But here, there is no clock ticking down your rest like a countdown, no pressure to maximize efficiency, just a cycle your body seems to understand instinctively. Historians still debate whether this pattern reflects an older, more natural human sleep cycle, one that modern lighting and schedules have erased. Some experiments even suggest that when people are removed from artificial light, they gradually return to this two-part sleep, which is both fascinating and slightly inconvenient if you enjoy sleeping through the night. You glance back toward the bed. The pull of sleep hasn't disappeared. It's just waiting, patient, unhurried. And as the minutes pass, maybe an hour, maybe more, you don't really know, you begin to feel it again, that gentle heaviness behind your eyes, that slow drift pulling you back. Second sleep is coming. No alarms, no notifications, no glowing screens demanding your attention. Just the quiet understanding that the night isn't over yet. It's simply paused. And now, it resumes. You don't notice the exact moment you fall back into sleep. There's no clear edge, no dramatic fade out. One moment you're sitting in that quiet, ember-lit room, and the next you're slipping downward again, like your body has quietly decided the conversation with wakefulness is over for now. Second sleep takes you differently. It's deeper in some ways, lighter in others, almost like the night is exhaling and pulling you along with it. In medieval Europe, this wasn't considered strange at all. In fact, it structured how people understood time itself. The night wasn't a single block. It was a rhythm, a breathing pattern. Sleep, wake, sleep again. And while you drift, the world around you doesn't change much. That's the strange comfort of it. No glowing city outside the window, no distant engines, no screens flickering through curtains, just darkness layered over darkness, broken only by the occasional animal sound or shifting wind. A world that truly turns off instead of pretending to. When you wake the second time, it feels softer than the first, less alert, more familiar, like returning to a place you never fully left. Your body stretches instinctively, adjusting to the cold air that has seeped into the room again. This is the deeper part of the night. The second sleep is usually longer, carrying you closer to dawn. But even here, the boundary between rest and wakefulness isn't rigid. People might briefly stir again, especially in households where multiple bodies share the same space. Privacy, in the modern sense, doesn't really exist here. Sleep is communal, layered, shared. A quirky historical detail: some medieval writings suggest dreams were thought to be cleaner or more meaningful during second sleep, as if the mind had already been partially cleared by the first rest cycle. Whether that's true or just poetic imagination, historians still argue whether dream interpretation played a bigger role in daily life than we give credit for. You sit up slightly again, but this time more slowly, more groggily. The fire has faded further. The room feels colder, heavier. Someone nearby shifts and sighs in their sleep. Another faint sound, maybe a dog outside, maybe just the wind brushing against wooden walls. And yet, there's no sense of urgency, no mental checklist of tomorrow's tasks screaming for attention. Time here is not a straight line. It's a loop that gently folds back on itself. You think about how strange it is that modern life compresses all of this into one uninterrupted block of sleep, as if rest itself has been standardized for efficiency. 8 hours, one start, one end, no interruptions allowed. Historians still argue whether segmented sleep was truly universal or just a reflection of pre-industrial living conditions. Some suggest it was simply a response to long, dark nights and limited evening activity. Others propose it might be closer to a natural human circadian tendency that modern society has overwritten. You lean back again, letting your body decide what it wants to do. There's no alarm waiting to punish you for drifting too long, no calendar demanding performance, only the slow return into warmth, into blankets, into second sleep completing its quiet work. And as you settle again, something subtle becomes clear. Sleep here is not an escape from life. It is part of it, a rhythm you don't control, you follow.
By the time second sleep loosens its grip, the world outside has begun to shift in a way you can't quite see yet, but you can feel it. Subtle changes in temperature, in silence, in the way the night no longer feels like a deep void, but something slowly thinning toward morning. And somewhere beyond your straw mattress and dim wooden walls, a different kind of structure has been quietly shaping this rhythm for centuries. Monasteries. If you had lived in medieval Europe, especially in Christian regions, your sleep pattern wouldn't just be personal, it would be regulated. Monastic communities followed strict schedules known as the canonical hours, dividing both day and night into prayerful segments. One of these was called nocturnes or matins, typically occurring deep in the night, sometimes right in the middle of what you've been experiencing as second sleep. So imagine this: while most of the world drifts through segmented rest, monks are already awake, moving through cold stone corridors, chanting in low voices that echo through candlelit halls. Their lives are built around repetition, discipline, and a very structured relationship with time. You, lying here in your fragile medieval bed, are indirectly shaped by that same worldview, even if you are not inside a monastery. Because in many regions, church bells didn't just mark the hours of prayer, they shaped how communities understood time itself. Sleep wasn't just biological, it was spiritual, communal, and rhythmic. Historians still argue whether monastic schedules influenced wider civilian sleep patterns or whether both simply reflected the natural environment of pre-industrial life. You turn slightly, the straw beneath you shifting with a dry rustle. Somewhere in the distance, you can almost imagine those bells, slow, deliberate, echoing through foggy air. Even if you don't hear them directly, their presence feels embedded in the structure of the night. And here's a quirky detail from old monastic records. Some monks were known to wake during the night not only for prayer, but also for quiet manual labor, copying manuscripts by candlelight. Imagine being half asleep, half awake, carefully writing sacred texts while your body still wants to return to the warmth of your bed. That blend of devotion and exhaustion is strangely human, even across 1,000 years. You sit up again, though this time it feels more like instinct than decision. The second sleep is finning now, preparing to release you toward morning. The room is colder, the darkness less absolute. A faint grayness might be forming beyond the shutters, though you can't quite tell. In this world, time doesn't rush. It organizes itself around repetition. Prayer, labor, rest, sleep, wake, sleep. Everything is cyclical, almost like breathing. Historians still argue whether this strict division of time in monasteries reinforced segmented sleep in wider society or simply mirrored an existing pattern already present among ordinary people. There's no single answer, only overlapping possibilities, like echoes in a stone corridor. You imagine the monks again, barefoot on cold floors, robes brushing stone, voices rising in unison in the dark. And then you contrast it with your own quiet existence here, less structured, but still following the same invisible rhythm. The strange thing is, even without bells, without strict rules, your body seems to know what to do. It wakes, it rests, it wakes again, as if time itself has muscle memory. You pull the blanket closer one more time. The second sleep is almost done now, gently dissolving instead of ending abruptly. There's no sharp transition, just a soft easing toward morning, like the night slowly letting go of you. And somewhere deep in this rhythm, you begin to understand something quietly unsettling. Sleep in this world was never just personal comfort. It was a shared pattern between people, places, and even silence itself. By the time second sleep finally loosens its hold, the room is no longer fully night, but not yet morning either. It's that strange in-between state where shadows start to lose their sharpness and the air feels slightly less heavy, as if the world is slowly remembering how to be visible again. You sit up, and this time there's no expectation of returning to deep sleep. The cycle is completing itself. Somewhere outside, roosters might already be testing the darkness with early calls, though you can't hear them clearly yet. In medieval life, this was the moment when households began to stir for the day ahead, gradually, not suddenly, like embers waking back into flame. And now you enter the final stretch of this long night, the transition into a world that will eventually forget it ever slept in two parts. Because that's what happens, slowly over centuries. As you step forward in time, everything begins to change. Not all at once, but in quiet, irreversible layers. The Industrial Revolution arrives like a mechanical tide. Clocks become stricter, work schedules become fixed. Nights begin to shrink under the pressure of productivity. You feel it even here, as if history is pressing closer. Factories demand early rising workers. Urban life introduces noise that never truly stops. And then comes one of the most subtle but powerful changes of all, artificial light. Gas lamps first, then electric bulbs. Suddenly, darkness is no longer absolute, it is negotiable. You sit in this imagined space and realize something important. Segmented sleep doesn't survive well in a world that refuses to fully go dark. A quirky historical note, early urban records describe people complaining that street lighting made nights too wakeful, as if humanity had accidentally extended its own consciousness. Historians still argue whether artificial lighting directly caused the disappearance of first and second sleep, or whether changing labor patterns were the real driver. You stand now, stretching your body as if shaking off centuries of rhythm. Your straw mattress, your cold room, your layered night, all of it feels distant already, like a memory that hasn't fully decided to fade. And then you arrive in the Victorian world. Here, sleep is already compressed, structured. One long block is becoming standard, but something else is happening quietly beneath that surface. Victorian housewives are carrying an invisible weight. Endless domestic labor fills their days, washing, cooking, cleaning, managing households, often without rest that matches their exhaustion. You can almost feel it in the air, the accumulation of fatigue that doesn't fit neatly into nighttime hours anymore. So what happens? They begin to steal moments. Not dramatic breaks, not long escapes, just small, quiet pauses in the afternoon, a chair by the window, a few minutes with eyes closed, sometimes a full nap when the household finally quiets. It is not officially recognized, not structured, but it exists anyway, like a secret language of survival. Historians still argue whether Victorian women invented the afternoon nap, or whether it simply evolved from older polyphasic tendencies that never fully disappeared. There's no single origin point, only adaptation under pressure. You imagine it clearly now, a woman sitting in a dim parlor room, sunlight softened through curtains, hands finally still. The body refusing to continue without pause. Not laziness, not indulgence, just biology asserting itself against expectation. And here is where sleep history becomes quietly emotional. Because what began as a natural medieval rhythm, first sleep, second sleep, midnight wakefulness, has transformed into something modern life struggles to even recognize. The body still remembers, but society rewrites the rules. Eventually, these short daytime rests evolve further. In the 20th century, they gain new names: power naps, rest breaks, productivity resets. Science begins to study them, trying to quantify what medieval people simply lived. And you, standing at the end of this long journey, can feel the continuity beneath all the changes. Sleep was never truly one thing. It was always a negotiation between light and dark, labor and rest, body and expectation. You take one last breath in this layered history, and the night finally releases you completely. Not into darkness, but into understanding. Now the world is quiet again, but differently quiet, like it has been gently reset. The old segmented rhythm still lingers in traces, in restless sleepers who wake at 3 a.m. without reason, in afternoon fatigue that modern schedules try to ignore, in the body's quiet memory of older nights. You realize something soft and almost comforting. Nothing about your sleep was ever broken. It just adapted, shifted, rewritten. And somewhere beneath all the centuries of change, the rhythm is still there, waiting. First sleep, second sleep, afternoon pause, like an old song the body never fully forgot. So when you finally close your eyes now, in your own time, in your own world, it doesn't feel strange to imagine that you're part of something much older, something still breathing quietly beneath modern life. And as the final thought fades, the night doesn't end, it simply continues differently, softly, quietly, as if it never stopped at all.